Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. The Pentagon is sending troops to Kabul to help in the partial evacuation of the U.S. Embassy. The State Department and the Pentagon have confirmed the deployment of some 3,000 troops as the Taliban continues its offensive. Early Thursday evening, CBS News confirmed the terrorist group has taken control of the city of Kandahar. That is the second largest city in the country and the 12th provincial capital taken by the Taliban. The Pentagon addressed the situation earlier.
The security situation continues to deteriorate in Afghanistan. And as I said before, our troops will, as always, have the right of self-defense. But this is a narrowly focused mission to help with to help safeguard an orderly reduction of civilian personnel.
Dan Lamothe joins me now with more. He's a reporter covering the Pentagon and the U.S. military for The Washington Post. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, these are fast-moving developments. First of all, what is the significance of Kandahar falling under Taliban control?
The fall of Kandahar is a significant moment. One, it's a very large city. Two, it also is a significant stopping point between Pakistan and Kabul. So as the Taliban continues to isolate Kabul, it's going to be more and more difficult for Kabul to remain secure as well.
So our David Martin of CBS News said that the plan to evacuate personnel out of Afghanistan had been in place for 2 weeks. What had you heard? What does that tell you?
I think that means that they very well could have expected this was a possibility. I don't know if they thought it was the most likely possibility 2 weeks ago. Things have obviously changed very quickly because it's not just the 3,000 troops going to Kabul. It's another 35 they're putting on standby in Kuwait and another 1,000 that they're setting to Qatar as a response to prepare for the incoming Afghan interpreters and others who have assisted the U.S. military over the years.
You know, Dan, I wonder, I mean, this had to, of course, have been anticipated, but the pace of this really seems to have accelerated, this Taliban offensive. Can you talk a bit about that? What had you been hearing from your Pentagon sources about the way in which the Taliban was going about this offensive, which, again, was expected given the time frame was public for that U.S. troop withdrawal?
Yes, if you go back to June, there was a U.S. intelligence assessment that was pretty widely reported that said within 6 months to 12 months of the U.S. military leaving, which is expected at the end of this month, that Kabul was in danger of falling. It wasn't a certainty, but it was a fear that they had. It was an assessment that they saw as a possibility. This week, the Washington Post first reported that there was a new assessment that said within 90 days that Kabul could fall. So things picking up speed very quickly. What we've seen is the Taliban encircle provincial capitals, and that took time. And then one by one, you've seen all of these capitals begin to fall over the last week or so.
All right. And just as our viewers are kind of hearing this news, I wonder if you could talk a bit more. You touched on this a moment ago, but just can you elaborate on sort of the strategic significance of Kandahar falling? Because we now have got a map that kind of shows that proximity to Pakistan that you were talking about, Dan. Can you talk a bit more about why this is such a critical place to fall, and you know, the idea that this was is something that was a possibility. We're now seeing it happen. It's really sort of a dramatic turn of events that we've seen here in just the last 24 hours.
I think it's significant on a few levels. One, Kandahar is the most significant city in the Afghanistan south. Two, because the Afghan military has been unable to hold a lot of territory, you've seen people for months now that have increasingly left other places, left the countryside, and gone to places like Kandahar because it was safer. Now Kandahar isn't safe either, so you have a humanitarian crisis situation also developing. Add on top of that, Kandahar is a place where the Afghan military has concentrated its time and effort. It's one of the cities they wanted to keep. Losing even that is really telling.
So do we know, Dan, what is the actual diplomatic presence of the United States going to be in Afghanistan after these personnel are evacuated from Kabul?
I think it's fast moving and fast changing. What I've heard today is that, for one, you're going to have a very muscular U.S. military presence at the airport, which is a few miles from the U.S. Embassy and sort of the diplomatic compounds that a lot of countries have. With that presence, you're going to see more and more U.S. Embassy missions shifting to the airport. Part of that will be to get people out of the country. But then the long-term question becomes, does the U.S. Embassy stay where it is outside the airport, or does that too move to the airport? And then ultimately, can you keep a U.S. Embassy there at all?
You know, it's been 20 years. The idea of negotiating with the Taliban really was unthinkable when this conflict began. But what will be sort of the legacy is perhaps not the word that I'm looking for at this moment, but, you know, for many people in Afghanistan, I cover the Bush administration, the promise was made to them that democracy was something that was within their grasp, that the presence of U.S. forces in Afghanistan would help to bring about security and safety, particularly for women and girls. And now we are seeing this very fast-moving situation, as you said, unfold here as American troops are leaving. How mindful, of course, are our military officials? Obviously, they are carrying out the orders that have been given to them, but Americans have died. We know this. It has been a long, protracted war. What is the sense among the troops, the rank and file, at this moment in time, even as we know there have been translators, people who have assisted the U.S. military over the years, who are now in grave danger?
It's a mixed bag. I myself have been going to Afghanistan since 2010. It's probably about a dozen trips at this point. I stay in touch with a lot of those people. Some of them are completely fed up over it. They just want this to end as quickly as possible. They saw this as an inevitable situation, and basically we keep dragging it out. More people die in the process. A lot of other people, you know, they want it to end, but they also think that the way that this has occurred over the last 90 days, 6 months, even a year or two, has really made things even worse than they otherwise would have been. One thing that I know a lot of people are concerned about is we've got all these interpreters that are still in Afghanistan. Many of them are in Kabul. The hope would be that the ones in Kabul can get out. But there's many more in other parts of the country. And even just getting to Kabul at this point is taking your life in your hands. Just the process of moving from Kandahar or some of these other cities by road up to Kabul, which is what they have to do to get out of the country now, is, you know, it's a very dangerous mission, and there will be people killed along the way, assumedly.
A dire situation. Dan Lamothe for us. Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you.